Do we have anybody who would like to jump in first and share an insight that their breakout room gave them for their business?
Hey, can I volunteer someone, Taylor?
Sure. I mean,
That's what this is about, right? So
yeah.
actually, I think this will be broadly applicable. So Nick was telling us that in his business, and Nick, you jump in, but I think it affects everyone because inflation is causing everyone to have to think about costs and then how those costs get passed on to the customers or eaten, but then you have to figure out other efficiencies. So Nick's in the insurance side, and he was saying a lot of I mean, the claims haven't gone up, but unfortunately the premiums are going up. And how do you explain that to your client and keep them happy and not have to spend maybe a lot more time servicing that client? Nick, did I get that right? Hopefully he's still there.
He is, but Nick's muted.
That's okay. Maybe he had to step away for a minute. So I'm just curious from the group. I mean, maybe for those that have been through the business, this cycle more than once, any thoughts on that?
I'll volunteer here. I actually have not had kickback. So I run an event production firm. We have about 30,000 participants, paying customers per year. And we recently did between a 5 and 10% price hike across the board. And it's been very, very little kickback. And then just anecdotally myself, like it's probably every week I get an email from some vendor or supplier we have just basically saying, hey, in order to avoid going out of business, we're gonna, tack on X%. And I don't know, maybe I'm just a little too easygoing with it, but I haven't noticed too much anger. So I'd be interested if Nick is getting like, if he's losing clients over it, or is.
It was maybe it was anecdotal. There was just one case he said where the company was going to see a 15 to 20% premium increase. And I don't know what they were already paying. So what 15 to 20, I mean, in any way, 15 to 20% is a lot. So.
Yeah. I mean, when we did it, we didn't even put out one of the cheesy explanations because like people know what's going on. I kind of cringe a bit when I read these emails that it's a bit of a sob story and, woe is us. If we don't do this, we can't make like everyone knows inflation's out of control. You deal with it.
That's good.
In the spirit of volunteering other people, I'll jump in. We have a returning guest, which I'm excited about. Devin Freeman is here. He was one of the first analysts at Summit Venture Studio, and now he's gone on to bigger and better things. So Devin, I would love to hear your experience so far in your new role and what challenges you're facing.
Yeah, good to be back and put back in the spotlight, I guess. You said the biggest challenges of just starting the new thing, huh?
Well, some of the challenges you're facing in your role, like what is it that you are working on that you're solving some problems, but maybe in the middle of solving the problem and could use some advice from some sages here on the call.
Goodness, I might have to think on this for a minute.
Well,
I mean,
you
a lot of
the point from our breakout group. I think that'd be a good one to put here in front of everybody. Maybe.
What was that? One more time, sorry.
I said you could use the question that we were talking about in our breakout group. That might be good to put in front of everybody here.
Yeah, I can do that. This is actually, Taylor, going back to the level up stuff with David. So I just the quick 2 sentences on it is during my capstone year last year, I was working on a project that involves connecting college athletes to clients like high school athletes for coaching lessons. If you follow the college sports world at all, that's a pretty new market and new opportunity for college athletes. And so we've been trying to make this connection. And the issue that we've seen is we've had a pretty good success at going to college athletes and getting their interest when we tell them their potential in making money and whatnot. Some of the difficulty has come from getting the high school athletes or clients, whoever it is, doesn't have to be high school, and their parents to push the actual purchase button to get the lesson, to buy the lesson. So just trying to find a way in the door of, such a different buyer and end user, and just trying to find the best way to market to them and get interest.
Devin, is that true across all sports, or is it like, because it seems like, like for football, especially when depending on the university, but you could get just from the boosters themselves would want their kids, or there's people that would want their kids associating with football. But does it really get more problematic when you start going to the other sports, or what are you seeing?
To get the clients, is that what you're? Yeah, actually football has been one of the ones that we had the most success in getting the college athletes, and I just finding the right avenue, I guess, to get to the right buyer has been the difficulty, just because, like you're saying, I mean, that was the same thought process for me. Is we've got all these boosters and whatnot that are putting money into it and not getting much in return, maybe a sponsorship or something, but just trying to get to the right buyer. But it's been the same issue throughout all the sports.
We should connect. I think you could talk to Sponsor, which is just they work with all these youth sports groups and teams, and like there might be a way to some kind of introductions there, where these kids who are all athletes wanting to go to college, or a lot of cases maybe there's something there.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. I'd love to connect on that for sure.
Yeah, I think that one would be a good one. That's a great suggestion, Spence. I think one of the thoughts I had there, Devin, was just building a grassroots effort with students or with the coaches at the high schools, and potentially offering some sort of revenue share or sponsorship coming back to the school or the team, where if the team signs up or team members sign up, then you're giving equipment back to that team, or you're doing some sort of revenue share or give back, so that there's an incentive for the coach to push their students to it, or the students are getting some sort of benefit. Like they could make it a part-time job for one of the students, getting their other either rival schools or other teammates or other sports in that school to sign up. So just sharing some incentive dollars in that model. But,
and is that, sorry, just to clarify, to the high school team doing that? Okay. Didn't know if you're saying for the colleges, universities.
No, it sounds like you have that one covered.
Are you having a hard time talking with coaches at the high schools?
Yeah, it depends. Some coaches love the idea. Other coaches are.
Yeah, because all my coaches would have jumped at it.
Yeah, and that's the hopeful. But we've had some that are very standoff, that don't love the idea of outside training coming in. They want their athlete to be doing their routines, their practices, and to work on the things that they want them to. The best kind of way to bridge that is to have the coaches have some kind of say in the routines and whatnot that the college athlete works on with an athlete. That gets a little complicated for what we're at, but hit and miss there.
I can see that some of the team sports, man, the individual sports. My football coach was also the track coach, and he would have loved to have shot put coaches, like all those individual things, people coming down, sharing what they're doing in college. Same with wrestling, all those individual sports.
Right, and I agree. And for things like shot put, we've had some interest in like high school coaches don't always have a shot put coach. But actually track was, what's that?
The disc or the hammer as well.
Right, but track was actually one that they were a little like standoff. The couple of coaches that I talked to, they did not love the idea, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, I just talked to a few more.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
There's many out there that would jump at it.
Yeah, I was going to ask Devin, is there a pricing concern, or is it just the idea of bringing in outside talent?
The pricing hasn't been brought up by anyone that I've talked to. So just kind of the outside training, not what they're prescribing, that kind of stuff.
Maybe their jobs are feeling threatened.
Yeah, I think a little bit. I don't know all what it is.
I don't know. Most of my high school coaches just want to win. It might just be
Yeah.
maybe the message, or maybe if you just get a chance to talk to them face to face, I'm pretty sure you'd have, and most of them all crossover. So once you get into a couple of them or in a district and you get someone in and they're breaking a record, and they're just going to push the fee onto the parents to pay for whatever the coach the class is. So
James has a
they
great
want to win.
point there, Devin, and forgive me for jumping in, James. James is my partner, but Devin, sports is a relationship business. Be there in person, it'll go better than over the phone or over the email or web.
Right. And that's how we've typically actually been doing it. We've thought that it's a little bit easier to present and talk to them just that way. And again,
there's probably several coaches that can't email still.
Right. And some of them loved it. I mean, we went to the 10th U athletic director all over it, but yeah.
I feel like most high school coaches dream of being a college coach or above and wonder if they would be good enough. And I think if you could have a way that they are the ones, like you said, it's kind of their idea. And then maybe if you have some way to have a spotlight, if it's a weekly newsletter or a page or anything where they get to be kind of showcased and their athlete is showcased and involved, like that would be worth the money alone, because they get some name recognition, and people like to hear about like other high schools in other parts of the country and see, you know, where the players are coming out of. So letting them be the champion and spotlighted somehow might help.
That's a good idea as well. I appreciate all of the input, by the way, really helpful.
Okay, that's awesome. I would say, Devin, reach out to people on the call here and see if you could pick their brains a little bit more. I think that would be helpful if anyone is willing.
Yeah, for sure I am, Devin. I have a brother who's been he coaches basketball, and he's not in Utah, he's down in Phoenix, but he's just starting his first year as sort of a high school head coach. This is his side gig for him, but I think in terms of somebody who'd be willing to, he's been at a bunch of the high schools in that area and could tell you about the attitudes of a lot of the coaches in at least one sport. And so if you want a referral, I'd be happy to make one for you.
Absolutely, would love it. We'll take you up on that for sure.
And Devin, I connected with you from your invitation earlier. We could talk more about comp league stuff later.
Okay, fantastic. Seriously,
interesting.
All of it, I love it, and I'm open to all of it. It's awesome.
Cool. Who wants to share another challenge from the breakout rooms or discussion topic?
I don't want to put Priscilla on the spot, but I think her topic is one that maybe would get more ideas with a broader, bigger audience than just our breakout.
Oh boy. My question was just, I wanted to know if I'm doing some research on climate change companies that have efforts in either climate change or sustainability or full circle. And what I was saying is with what's happening in the world generally, all companies are going to have to get on a program, either full transparency of their product and their usage in energy or water consumption or whatever it is. You see it happening more and more. And so it was a bit of a very general question, but that's, one of the feedback Chad was saying is like, we'll be more specific, but that's part of the research. It's like what's happening in Utah in that field, I guess.
I have some insight into that. I work a lot with the oil and gas industry here in Utah, and specifically with the Utah Petroleum Association. And then we do a lot in renewable energy. I work at Diversified Insurance. So some of our clients include Lumio, which is the second largest solar panel installation company in the country, Blue Raven Solar, and a few other electronic battery operators. And in working in energy, whether it's renewable energy or traditional oil, gas, and coal, there's a lot of struggles with ESG scores. If you look at the industry, more and more people are trying to be transparent and have this environmental, social, and a policy in place. And you look at, from ExxonMobil, on their board of directors, most of them now are ESG experts, and there's a lot of pushback. But as we all notice and we all see with rising gas prices, a lot of times this green initiative is really a facade to a certain degree. And I'm not, despairing that at all, but if you look at the research, all the renewable energy, we go into wind farms, and all the amount of refining that has to do with the minerals on the batteries, it takes a lot of oil, gas, and diesel to, refine these minerals into the solar panels. So people don't realize when they, plug in their Tesla where that energy is coming from. They just think, oh, it's green. Well, if you can't farm it, you have to mine it. And a lot of that comes down to the oil and gas. So, to your point, Priscilla, I think there is a lot of research out there. We do a lot in this space. So I'd love to connect with you and see what we can do to kind of point you in the ESG, both on the energy of renewable and then kind of just in that area of ESG.
That would be great. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, and what happens too is if you're selling a product or you're selling a service or whatever, there's also this greenwashing trend where it's like you make think that you're green, but you're really not. And I think that's going to be the next evolution, where people are going to be asking more from product or services to try to get into the deep solution, like, are you just greenwashing me, or are you truly fully transparent and recyclable and thinking through the full cycle of whatever you're doing.
Great points. Any other thoughts for Priscilla?
I'm actually consulting for a company right now that's created a generator that uses rare earth magnets. There's no fossil fuels or anything associated with it. And they're also writing several contracts across the country to process rare earth from the fly ash, which is a byproduct from a lot of the different mines. And so they're actually on a plan right now to make a lot of the different plants greener by taking their byproducts and being able to let them show that this money that they're spending on disposing of the byproduct can now actually be recycled and pulled through to create more rare earth elements from that. And it is fascinating on that side. And I'd be happy to connect you with some of the folks that I'm consulting for over there on that side.
Thank you. Love that too. Thank you, James.
Cool. Jessica, it's good to see you join. We are just sharing some of the challenges in the businesses that we have, and then the group is brainstorming on resources or ways to address those challenges. So we were in breakout rooms beforehand. Anybody else have some thoughts or would like to volunteer someone from their breakout room? Chad and Spencer, I think that was a great idea for you guys to volunteer other people. So now's your chance to volunteer someone.
I could in return volunteer Chad, because he had although he might be busy. I don't know. Okay, there he is back.
No, I really appreciate that. We didn't say no tag backs. So
Okay.
Priscilla, that is totally, it's not against the rule to tag back.
Okay, because he had a good challenge with messaging.
You're muted, Chad.
Happy to share, but can't turn on my mic. Sorry, guys. No, yeah, appreciate the tag back, Priscilla. No hard feelings. The project that I was working on is something I've shared a little bit with Taylor and Spencer and others, but it's about trying to distill out message testing frameworks. So with the idea, like almost everybody that I'm working with has this need where they are trying to determine which messages are the most effective with which messages and which channels are most effective with their prospects. And so, but it's difficult to do that in a really systematic and effective way. So and a way that doesn't take as much time. So the project I'm working on is developing a message testing framework that can be deployed quickly, that helps you get to effective messages as fast as possible. And would love to hear about other similar types of things that any of you guys have tested or run, or that direction you want to point me in on, even things other people have published or whatever.
I have one thought, but you're not going to like it, Chad, because it doesn't answer your question. So I was involved with this a lot in my years at MarketStar. I worked in business development, and I would evaluate hundreds of companies a year to try and see who was really going to win. And that involved trying to kind of get a feel for their message and their value proposition, whether or not it would resonate, because we were trying to pick companies that we felt like had the makings of a winner, but just needed scale. And I can tell you, across 14 years, anytime I saw somebody try to scale up and make the message refining process faster, ended up missing something really important, and in a lot of cases that miss was critical, and led to either failure or significantly less results. I have not ever found a good shortcut to good old-fashioned elbow grease when it comes to that stuff. And sometimes I think a point of value can be, look, there really is a tried and true way, and you're just smart to do it. Anybody else who tells you that there's going to be a shortcut is really short. And now there might be new things that can make things go a little bit faster and better today. But the biggest thing I see people miss when they use scaled up systems as opposed to focus group type feedback is you miss out on the qualitative points. And because the only way to really scale and go fast is to stick with quantitative, and you miss absolute nuggets. I can't tell you, because I ran a lot of these projects myself. My biggest one, we designed a channel sales program for Logitech before they started selling to businesses. They were selling to retail only. Their business to business in the their business to business revenue in the United States was a couple $100,000. We did a project for them for 6 months. We heard one person say once in our focus groups, well, your value proposition for mice and keyboards is a lot like Sony's value proposition for monitors. One person said it once. A qualitative statement would have been, it was in one of those other comments that people can't really bundle together and put in a big report, but we saw it. Sony was also a client of ours, so it hit us like a ton of bricks, and we're like, wait a second, computer resellers that sell Sony monitors, you can find those guys. They look like this. Yeah. Logitech go after those people, and that business in 10 years became a $400 million a year business for Logitech, selling keyboards and mice. They had phone-based salespeople doing $10 million a year over the phone, selling $5 and $10 keyboards and mice. And so what I'm saying is that I've done it a lot for a long time. It's been a while since I've done that kind of stuff. If you use systemized tools to help you scale, find a way to put the qualitative back in, or a mechanism to capture that qualitative, because it is totally hit and miss, but sometimes you will miss the very best ideas if you don't have that. So
no, I appreciate that a lot. And in fact, if you're open to it, when I kind of get this checklist fleshed out, I'd love to get your feedback on it and see what you think. Some of the things that I'm looking at are just being systematic instead of being ad hoc. Like, it's like, okay, you tested something or you had an interview. Did you actually record it? Did we actually log the sentences? Can we actually pair it back to an interview subject, our value prop in their words, things like that. But I love the insights that you shared there. That's great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share more, Chad. I did it a lot. I had a lot of fun with it. The other thing that I found that was really helpful is you got to find people who know enough to ask the good questions, because your answers are only as good as the questions you ask. And sometimes a generalist, somebody who specializes in writing surveys, is not a specialist in the topic. So you need to find specialists in the topic that can say, whoa, wait a second, there's a few magical questions. People normally have to have a ton of experience in a specific space to know the right questions to ask. But if you have the right question and you ask it in the right context and you gather that qualitative feedback, I'm telling you that there's stuff that I saw that made billions for technology companies, but they wouldn't have had it otherwise. And that is super not easy to pull off, and it way does not scale. Way doesn't scale. So it's the opposite of the answer you're looking for.
That's awesome
that's
feedback,
perfect.
Nate. As you were talking about that, I had a few thoughts. One, Chad, it's also somewhat self-serving, but the experts that Nate is talking about, at least for our projects, I think we could probably tap into some of those university professors, PhDs who spend a lot of time in specific industries and get them to help us in the question generation that Nate was talking about. That may be a good source for kind of that subject matter expert. But the other thing that I was thinking about, Nate, with your feedback there on the qualitative, I would be really interested to see what a product would look like in the validation space if Venture Validator and Volley had a baby. Like being able to scale some of that recorded qualitative, yeah, I'm not going to type this out in an other box, but if I were able to pose a question like in a Volley group and people were recording their answers, I think that just allows people to give more elaborate answers in a survey if they're doing it like that, and they may be a little less worried in an asynchronous video like that. But that may be something that we should test in our work on that validation, is seeing if there are platforms like a Volley that we could do asynchronous surveys and then transcribe the answers.
Taylor, I think that's a good point. I remember when we were doing ours, the biggest challenge that we had was finding people we could talk to, right? Because there's two types of experts. There's like an executive level expert from top down, but then there's also a trenches level expert from bottom up. And so we would find, like, if you go to agencies, like MarketStar I worked there, so that's just the first one that comes to my mind, but there's lots of agencies like that. Those executives, they have a very rich career because they've worked on dozens of product categories and solutions in their career and have built from ground up. And not a lot of people do that in their career. And so you get a wide diversity of expertise in a small number of people. So agency executives would be a good top-down perspective. A bottom-up perspective, in most of these markets, there's typically some kind of an indirect sales model. Like think about sports equipment retailers, right? If you can find a retail store manager or a retail store owner, those people are in the trenches with the people that use it. A lot of them are fans. They use that stuff themselves. And so you want both of those from your expertise perspective when you're asking people. And if you can get enough people into that network where folks are just willing to speak up, finding folks to do the surveys with was our single biggest cost and our single biggest time taker for sure. And so if you could get those people to join a community, almost like an Airbnb, but for feedback, and then it's do paid surveys, the problem is a lot of those people don't have time. And normally bribing them to do a survey, at least for us, was really expensive. There were agencies that we used, like Lighthouse in Salt Lake still does it, but you pay per completed survey. So they'll go as long as it takes to do a completed survey, but they only charge per completed survey. We used them for years and they never let us down once. The work was always high quality. They did a good job of capturing qualitative data. Yeah, so I'm probably talking too much, but anyways.
I'd love to add one thing that's kind of interesting. So we've been talking, Taylor, to these prosthetists on the project that we've been working on about getting feedback. And we asked them specifically, like, what would you think about using like a Volley type, asynchronous, where we could have multiple people giving feedback. And one person pointed out that some prosthetists might not want to share some of their approach to other prosthetists. Like they all kind of have their own because they're competitive with one another. And, you know, maybe if they knew they're in multiple separate markets, but he said it's interesting. You don't want, people might be, they don't want to let you know how they're getting more referrals from doctors, you know, because they're kind of like pharmacists. So I think it is interesting to think like, would it be enough for them to want to hear what their peers have to say, to kind of hear how they answer it, that they would be curious, but would they actually put forth their ideas? And so we've been talking about ways to get around that. And the one-to-one is it works, but to Nate's point, it's a lot more time consuming.
I'd like to add in something. This is Harley in Boise. What comes to mind is political science. We tried to get an open space campaign here in the early 2000s, and everybody said it was going to be impossible. What we did is we brought in Trust for Public Lands experts in political science from Portland to come in and take a look at what we were trying to do. And they said, you've got to find who is not decided. Don't spend $1 on those people who will vote yes. Don't spend $1 on those people who will vote no. Go find who is undecided, and then go ask the question is, what would make them say yes? So back to asking a very important question. So we all thought it was recreation, wildlife, open space, blah, blah, blah. That was not it. It was soccer moms. Thank you, Priscilla. I'm going to go read that book. It was soccer moms that just wanted to know that there was open space that wasn't going to be built out. There weren't going to be McMansions up there and whatnot. And we were fought by the realtors. We were fought by the Chamber of Commerce. Nobody wanted it to pass, and it passed with a supermajority. 10 years later, it got renewed. Real estate agents were on board. Chamber of Commerce was on board. Everybody was on board because open space sells, and they sell it to legacy landowners who want to say, hey, look, I want a legacy when I'm dead. I want to contribute to the community. I want to deed and trust my open space to the community. So focus on what you think you know and prove yourself wrong. It's called the null hypothesis. Prove it's wrong, and then you'll know what's right.
The one thing I wanted to add from my time doing surveys as well, in a lot of cases where we were dealing with those dealers, that they wanted to make sure that their information wouldn't be shared with competitors, even if they were in another geography, because they felt very sensitive to that. So if you are going to use a technology platform, you've got to have a way to let these guys know, hey, you know, we're the only ones that are going to see that. Your competitors won't see it, because if the platform's too open, then people may not give feedback. It's you know, it's like, we're asking you because we want to make sure we take care of you better as a business partner, but we won't be taking your ideas and giving them to your competitors, which is another local computer reseller. And so sometimes something like that is important as well. Maybe you need to have the option, make it open so that everybody can see it when they all want to do that, or make it closed so that only the person asking can see it, so that folks feel comfortable sharing along with the promise that I won't take your ideas and empower all your competitors to do the same thing.
Hey, Nate.
Yeah.
Nate, do you have like any formal language for that? Like, can you possibly share that?
A formal what? Sorry?
Do you have any, sorry, I'm in a space. Do you have any formal language for that? Like what you would share in terms of if you're going to make a commitment of some sort to a partner, like, hey, I'm not going to share this information. Like, how would you include that?
Well, when we were doing it, so that there were several different ways that we were gathering this information. We'd normally start the survey, and this was years ago when I did these, but we'd start the survey by saying, hey, thanks for taking the time. Your information is not going to be shared with your competitors. It's this technology company that's trying to figure out how to serve you better. And it'd be like, it's Logitech or Nortel or Panasonic or something like that. And so because they normally recognize the technology brand name, Oh, I know Logitech. So yeah, they could do a better job because I think their systems today are terrible. And the person would capture all that information. Hey, your stuff is terrible, but if you did these things, it'd be better, right? And so I think an assurance up front that, hey, that this is who's using the information. It won't be shared with your competitors. We're just trying to design a better program to support you. Something along those lines.
Yeah, that's super interesting because we work with, so I work for Techstars and we run accelerator programs globally, but we hear a lot of like survey information from a bunch of different startups. Sometimes it gets difficult for us to say that we can't share information across with competitors just because we work with so many different industries and startups that have similar.
Well, the difference here is you're talking about competitors from a tech startup perspective. I'm talking about competitors from an indirect channel provider perspective. So think of.
Got it.
Are you, for Techstars, are you here in Utah by any chance?
Yeah, I'm in New York right now, but normally I'm in Salt Lake.
but you're familiar with Utah, so you know Dan the laptop man, PC laptops, right? So MarketStars sold to guys like Dan all the time. And what we were talking about is, Dan, we're not going to take your ideas and go through and tell it to Pomeroy, who's a national reseller that also works in Utah. So we're talking about retailers like that. It'd be like, Bingham Cycle Shop to, I don't know, another cycle shop here in Utah. Those were the kind of competitive things that we were talking about.
I see.
Share.
Thanks for that clarity.
Yeah, we did do a lot of competitive research, and there's a lot companies can learn from competition. Like I studied partner programs from dozens of companies, and then for Logitech, for example, I'm like, here's everybody that's in your category and what they're doing. But you got to remember, all those people are calling folks that work with all these other companies that are not your competitors, and what they provide from a value perspective is your competition. So look at what everybody's doing. But normally the details of someone's partner support program is typically public. But if there was anything that I'd received from a private perspective, we just wouldn't say that we're not sharing it. We would just tell them anything that's protected by somebody, we don't share. If it's protected information, non-public, we don't share it. We have to have a way of acquiring it honestly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
This is awesome discussion. Thanks for the question there, Jessica. Nate, your insights super valuable. Thank you. So we have been recording this. We'll get this posted so you can watch it again, but we'll also get the transcription and kind of start putting together maybe a list of some of the resources and ideas that we shared today. But really just want to thank everybody for your time today. This was really helpful for us, for me. So I appreciate it, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for coming today.